Call me delusional. Call me a delusional fan. I say this all the time. I think we'll go 11-6. Like, call me a delusional fan. Call me a delusional fan. I think
I say 9-8.
I like call me delusional as much as you want, everything like that. I'm sure people will on my lives every time I say this, but I think we're going to go 11-6, and I think we're going to go to the playoffs, whether it's a wild card or win the division.
Alrighty, welcome everybody back to the channel. If you don't know who I am by now, my name is David. I also go by Miller Football, and I am currently on a journey to talk about all 32 NFL teams alongside fans of those teams. And if it's not apparent by the little bit of the jersey you can see on the gentleman to my right, we're going to be talking about the Los Angeles Rams today. And obviously, considering I'm not a Rams fan, I had to enlist my two favorite Rams fans to come on and help me talk about the team. To my right, we've got Evan, also known as LA Rams superfan, and below me, we've got the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Hollywood himself, Alex, also known as Hat Guy at this point. He's completely exceeded me in subs and attention and just popularity, but I couldn't be prouder. That's not coming from a place of jealousy. I'm incredibly proud. But before we dive into things, how are we doing today, guys?
Doing great. Yeah, I'm doing great.
Yeah.
I'm just happy to be here.
Yeah, happy to be here, ready for the season to start. Training camp starting this week, and everything's good.
Yes, sir.
This episode, I said this off air, but this episode will be significantly gloomier than last episode. Last episode, won the Super Bowl, run it back, everything like this. This episode is 5-12, a lot of very low predictions. So, I mean, yeah, we're in a good mood because I'm glad to be here, but I'm not in a very good mood.
Yeah, that's valid. Hey, listen, I feel your pain. It will not quite as bad. I don't got the ring to show for it, but, you know, I feel your pain of being a bad football team. But speaking of that ring, I got to ask, first question I got for you guys, was it worth it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know how it's not. I feel like so many teams, they sell out, they do it all, they do all the shit, and they get nothing out of it. You know, I think not to shit on the Eagles, and I think the Eagles will still be good. I think the Eagles are going to take a huge step back this year. Not that they sold as much as we did, but I'm sure if somebody were to tell him, hey, you lose 3 more draft picks and you win the Super Bowl against Kansas City instead of losing it, they take that every day of the week. Now, they won a couple of years ago, but, like, again, there's so many teams that have never even been to a Super Bowl. For us to have 2 Super Bowls in my lifetime is something that no 49ers fan can say. It's like, what are we doing? Yeah, so of course it was worth it. And to see it happen, like, in my 20s, I went to every playoff game ahead of it. It's just, obviously I didn't go to the Super Bowl, but, like, so worth it. No question for me.
Well, I was fortunate enough to go to that Super Bowl, and I was there at the NFC Championship game when we knocked off the 49ers, as well as that wild card game when we destroyed the Cardinals. So I was there through the whole ride except for that Bucs game, which I know that you were at, Alex, and which was a legendary game as well. But yeah, just to piggyback off that, it was 1,000% worth it. Everyone, you know, I get a lot of trolls on my TikTok account, and everyone always says, "Oh, you guys sold your future for 1 ring." I'm like, well, first off, we didn't sell. We can get into that later. But secondly, it's like, okay, even if we did, how hard it is to win a Super Bowl. You know how many teams are like hungry and begging to get back to a Super Bowl? I mean, just talk to like Bills fans, for example, who lost 4 straight in the early 90s and haven't been back, and talk to Lions fans, Jaguars fans. So it's just like, it is so hard to get to a Super Bowl, let alone win it, that, like, have a chance to get there and win it, I say go all for it. You know, if you have to give up a few draft picks, then it's worth it, in my opinion.
Well, by the way, the Bills. I don't want to, you know, this is a Rams podcast, right? But I don't want to shit on the Bills. I don't want to take too much time shitting on other teams. But the Bills this year are, I think, closer to missing the playoffs than making the Super Bowl. And if they do not make the Super Bowl, all of their fans are going to consider the season a disappointment. And I think that the last 2 years were their years to do that. The Bills are the Rams if they didn't make the Super Bowl. Last year, super team, everything like that. And everybody's, Super Bowl or bust, Super Bowl or bust. They didn't make it out of the second round. You can't say that for the Rams. Now you can say we went 5-12, and I don't think the Bills will go 5-12, but we were more injured than anybody. I think I can make excuses till the day I die about this past season. It doesn't even matter to me. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I really, it's so worth it. Yeah, that's my answer.
Yeah, and it's just like I said, it's really hard to even get to the Super Bowl. I mean, not to shit on your Bears, but I know that it's like, sorry, it's just like it's hard, and they're moving in the right direction. But I'm sure Bears fans would, take a bad year winning the Super Bowl in order to win the Super Bowl. I'm sure they would be totally fine going 5-12 if they could get a Super Bowl. So, I mean, you could tell me, but I would just imagine so.
I mean, we go close to 5-12 every year, and we don't even get the Super Bowl to soften the blow. So
I didn't mean to like fuel to the fire. I was just giving an example of like teams that are like,
I get it.
How hard it is. But
I'm a super optimistic Bears fan. I'll tell you right now, I think this team is a lot better than a lot of people give it credit for. But I get your point, and absolutely. The reason I asked that question, and Evan kind of touched on it, is you see a lot of people online right now, especially giving Rams fans a lot of shit about selling their soul, selling their team, whatever, for one measly ring. That's one more ring than however many other teams have won in the past 10 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
That it's got to be worth it. It's got to be. There's no way it isn't.
Yeah, and I think it's 12 teams out of the 32 that have never won even one
something around
in their history. So like, think about that. I mean, that's not quite half the teams, but it's pretty close. And it's just, and also another thing I wanted to add is that people say like, oh, you guys are 1 year wonders. Well, did they forget about 2017 to 2021 where, we went to the playoffs 4 times. We had, won the NFC West 3 times, went to another Super Bowl. I get it. It was controversial and we got embarrassed by the Patriots, but we were still there. And then I see a lot of people say we're 1 year wonders, and that's just not the case.
I'm sure we're going to touch on this later, but we're just going to spring it out right now. I hate this new narrative. I hate how football works. I love football. It's my favorite sport, whatever, but I hate how football works and how football fans work, of the recency bias and the forgetfulness of how things actually work. The other day, so David touched on it a little bit, but I have a podcast now that's just like superhero stuff, like nerd stuff, whatever. So we don't have too many sports fans, but there was a kid that DM'd us, and I respond to every DM I can and everything like that. But there's a kid that DM'd us that just wanted to talk football, and he kept pressing this narrative that Stafford is a bum, and the only reason we won 2 years ago was because he had a super team behind him when we did not win a game in November. I hate this idea that we were a super team. We did not win a game in November. Nobody picked us going into the playoffs. I remember there's a really, really big sports like betting guy on TikTok. I can't for the life of me remember his name, but he also has a betting TikTok. Yes, Trent. Book it with Trent. Yes, him.
He's very well known.
He made a betting video, TikTok, before the Cardinals-Rams playoff game.
I remember
saying he was picking the Cardinals, but in that video he said, "Who am I picking of these two frauds?" That's what people were saying about us, and then we won it all. And to say Stafford's a bum, like less than a calendar 2 years ago, he threw a no-look pass to win the Super Bowl in a 2-minute drill. To say that guy is a bum, and the super team thing, and that Stafford got carried and everything. Everybody other than Stafford fell apart in the Bucs game. Tom Brady, fourth quarter comeback. They're coming back. We were up 27-3. The only reason we won is because we weren't up 28-3. We're up 27-3. The whole thing collapses. Cooper Kupp, the MVP of the year, fumbles. Cam Akers somehow fumbles twice.
The Brian Allen bad snap.
The Brian Allen snap,
or whatever you call it. Yeah.
Snap 20 feet over Matthew Stafford's head. Everything is falling apart. Everything is falling apart. And then with Ndamukong Suh kissing him on the lips, he throws a dime to Cooper Kupp to take us down the field. He gets us to clock the ball, and then we win on the Matt Gay field goal to prevent overtime. Like, to say that guy, like, he's the guy that won that game, calling him a bum is crazy. You know, he's not in the top 20 in Madden.
I know. That really pissed
the Madden quarterback ratings this year are atrocious across the board.
It's the worst I've seen in my life.
Yeah.
Trevor Lawrence is a top 3 quarterback. Like, it's crazy.
I would say top 7, but I don't know about top 3.
Top 3 is a bold take, but I respect it. So, I love it.
We're going to have to talk about this somehow. Obviously, I had a bad year because I'm a Rams fan and everything. But for betting terms, this is the most I've ever bet in my life. I bet the spread of 5 games a week this year, every week, and I bet 72%. I'm legitimately one of the best NFL bettors in the world last year. Like crazy. I made an obnoxious amount of money, and that's something I've already bet is Trevor Lawrence MVP. I think that Trevor Lawrence is going to solidify himself this year as a top 3 quarterback, no question.
I mean, I think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say he has the potential. There's so many great QBs, especially in the AFC, that it's just, you got Burrow, you got Josh Allen, you got Mahomes, of course.
Josh Allen has regressed every single moment he spends away from Brian Daboll.
Let's go, Josh Allen slander. I love it.
You do have a point there. You do have a point.
I am a major Josh Allen hater. That was my take early last season with all my friends. I'm like walking into the Bills game that I saw you at, by the way. I'm walking into the Bills game going, yeah, we're going to win this. I think Josh Allen is going to regress this year without Brian Daboll. I think Brian Daboll is the guy that made him the guy he is. But then they torched us, and I looked like a fucking idiot. Well, it turns out I looked like an idiot until week 11, and then finally started to show. And I think he's going to have the worst year of the last 3 years. I think his worst year is going to be this year because I think Daboll clearly shows that he's a freaking genius because he made Daniel Jones and that team win a playoff game.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Like he's clearly brilliant, and I've always thought that. And I think I'm an anti. We talked about this on the pod last year, but we talked about this on this show last year. Obviously, David, you kind of talked me out of it a little bit with Eberflus, but I'm an anti-defensive coach guy. I think that defensive coaches just aren't for today's NFL. And I think Sean McDermott's the same way. And I think he consistently handles things poorly. He consistently handled things poorly this year offensively. And I think that this whole Stephon Diggs thing, I think is entirely on Sean McDermott. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, there could be a billion different factors that are going into that, but sure, it could be McDermott. I mean, I honestly haven't thought about it enough to have my own opinion on it, but you definitely have a point. I just want to backtrack for a moment. When you were talking about the Rams-Buccaneers playoff game, I don't think I've ever heard someone describe a quarterback being under pressure as them about to be kissed on the lips by a defensive lineman. That was fucking hilarious. That was great. Thank you for giving me that visual imagery because now I can't unsee it.
Of course. The way they fell, their face masks touched.
I'll have to go back and rewatch the clip. I haven't seen it since it happened in the game. But that's beautiful imagery. Thank you for that.
I just want to add on to the whole Matthew Stafford narrative thing before we get into what went wrong this season and how things look moving forward. Is that people say oh, the defense carried. I get that a lot. Or they're like, oh, you guys would have won with Goff, and I tell them no. Goff's had a bit of a renaissance in Detroit. I give him credit. But those of us who know that Goff was holding us back. Notice how Cooper Kupp became an MVP caliber player in the first year with Matthew Stafford, whereas before that he was a solid kind of maybe slightly above receiver. And all of a sudden Matthew Stafford comes in and he's the number one wide receiver. That's no coincidence. And I also want to point out too that the whole super team narrative is OBJ tore his ACL at the end of the first half. And I tell people, did you watch the Super Bowl? Because if you look at that second half, the entire offense was just Kupp and Stafford. The running game could get nothing going. Tyler Higbee was out. Obviously, OBJ got hurt. Robert Woods was out. It was just them two. It was the entire offense. Now, give credit to the defense. They were elite. They did their thing. But I try to point out that Stafford is a big reason why we won the Super Bowl, and you can't just plug in Goff and expect the same results, because that is far from the truth. So, but people don't want to believe me.
No Goff slander on this show.
I'm not slandering Goff. I'm just saying that Stafford's
we're not slandering Goff. Goff does not win that Super Bowl. Stafford does. That being said, Goff today is significantly better than he was 2 years ago. Goff is great. I love Goff. If you want to say Goff is better than Stafford, I disagree, but I have no problem with it. Nothing but love for Jared Goff. He is my man. I love that guy.
I'm not shitting on Goff. I like him a lot too, and I want to see him do well in Detroit. But yes. I'm just saying that if he was still our quarterback that year, we don't win the Super Bowl, is all I'm saying.
I agree.
And he doesn't make that, minute pass to Kupp in the divisional round against the Bucs. He doesn't do the no look in the Super Bowl. He doesn't elevate Kupp to elite status.
He does not have the balls to do any of those things. He just lacks the cojones. It's
that's the arm strength either. I don't think he has the arm strength.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah, but
right. So, but that's all. It's not Goff slander. It's just that
it's realism. It's being honest.
Yeah, I think that Stafford is a little bit of a step above and kind of push us over the edge a little bit. And so that's all I wanted to add to that part of the conversation.
Yeah, and I mean, just bringing up what Evan brought up earlier, the fact that you guys were in the Super Bowl a few years earlier with Goff at the helm and couldn't get anything done despite it being a super low-scoring game. And that's not to discredit the Patriots. I know I'm one of the few people that will defend Bill Belichick and Tom Brady till the day I die. But point being, right?
Yep, me too.
Yeah, the team just was a quarterback away. And then you bring in Stafford, who was a team away, and you bring them together, right? You have Stafford was rotting in Detroit for years. He was consistently one of the most talented quarterbacks in the league. Like Alex mentioned, he has the cojones, and you add the fact that he probably has the strongest, if not one of the strongest arms that I've seen in my lifetime. Like, he's a fantastic quarterback, and I understand people want to rag on him for the injury and whatnot, but I mean, it's his arm and his spine, right? Like, the two worst things that can happen to a quarterback he's currently dealing with. I think that would take any quarterback from looking elite to, kind of being questioned. And I think if Stafford comes back healthy, he'll be perfectly fine. Granted, he is a little bit older, so maybe he won't be the same Stafford, but he'll still be a top 15 quarterback. He can still cook. He's smart, and that's a big thing. I don't understand people completely writing off Stafford. I don't understand people writing off any of the quarterbacks that are currently dealing with injuries, like Kyler Murray's another one, for example. It's like Alex said, the recency bias is off the charts with NFL discourse right now.
It's because of social media. I mean, it goes with the NBA too. I think just social media, you have access to information at all times. And because information is coming in 24/7, of course, you're going to focus more on what is more recent. But yeah. And in regards to the Stafford injuries, what I've been following is that he is fully healthy, ready to go. I think what it comes down to is, can the O-line stay healthy too? Because that was, I think, the biggest issue. Now, I don't want to blame the issues on just the O-line, but I will say a majority of the issues last year was just the O-line just kept getting hurt. And that started in the preseason. People always say, oh, but what about that Bills game? And I tell them that, in the Bills game, we were tied 10 at half. And, we weren't playing great, but we were staying in it. We were holding our own. But I want to say it was Brian Allen got hurt midway through that game, and everything fell apart after that. And then during the preseason, we had another offensive lineman, Logan Bruss. Now, I don't think he was going to play every snap, but he was supposed to be, a part of our offensive line, tears his ACL in the preseason. And so every week, starting from the preseason, the injuries just piled up to the offensive line. And we had a record like 14 different starting offensive line combinations in 17 games played. I mean, no offense is going to be successful with that, not even the Chiefs. So, I try to point that out to people that if the offensive line can just stay healthy, it'll at least be competent. It may not be great, but it'll be like competent, I think.
But like we got to consider like what was it, week 14, 13, 15, I can't remember, the Raiders game, which, by the way, we'll get to it, maybe a top 5 Rams game for me all time in terms of happiness.
A hell of a game, especially with the circumstances.
But our quarterback was Baker Mayfield, 2 days off of being cut by the Panthers.
And
who was our number one receiver? Our number one receiving options were Van Jefferson, Ben Skoranek, and Tutu Atwell. By the way, a Van Jefferson that had played like 3 weeks prior was his first game of the season. That was our offense. We had no offensive line. It's just like, and we and we still win that game against a Raiders team that is dying for a playoff spot. Like, we just had more injuries than anybody. Like, we weren't going to do anything last year. After, I can't remember what game it was, but they're like the 49ers game where we were 3-3, and then we lost it to go 3-4. So then the next week when we lose to Tampa, which was a game I was at, to be 3-5.
That game still haunts me, that Tampa game. It
to be 3-5.
We had it in our hands.
Yes, and they win on the last second to go 4. We would have been 4-4, and instead we're 3-5. From that moment, I knew the season was over, and I just looked at it like a casual fan for the rest of the year, and I was super casual. I didn't let anything upset me. So I was at that Tampa game. It absolutely broke me, and I was like, you know what? Just not our year. No problem.
Yeah. So that game, there were a bunch of people being like, "Oh, they're cooked, they're done," and I'm like, it's only been 7 games. There's time to turn it around. If we could beat Tampa, go 4-4, we're right back on track. It was right after that Tampa game where all we needed was 1 first down, and we would have won. But then we had to give Tom Brady 40 seconds to come back and win. It was at that moment when I finally accepted, okay, nothing's going to happen this year. I hope that we can get it together and maybe play decent down the stretch, but I was like, I don't think we're a playoff team this year. It was at that moment. But I just want to point out, and once, okay, so towards the end of the season, we started getting a little bit more consistency with the offensive line, like the last 3 weeks of the season. And it was better. We were putting up more points. We were staying in games more. We were more competitive. And so, like I said, I don't expect the offensive line this year to be elite, but I expect it, if healthy, to at least be, average, right around there, which I think is all we need to be a solid team this year. So, but yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I want to rope things back a little bit. Looking at the Rams last season, obviously it's already been mentioned, 5-12 record, 3rd in the NFC West, 4-5 at home, 1-7 on the road, 2-3 in their last 5 games. And just as a whole, as has already been brought up multiple times, injuries completely ruined the season, right? And that's very evident when you're looking at the numbers. Something I have been doing in these episodes this year is taking a look at the EPA per play numbers. And when you look at the Rams, they were 17th in rushing, 25th in passing, which, again, all because of injuries. You're running through, 4 or 5 different quarterbacks. You're not going to be a great passing football team. That's just the reality of the situation. 10th in run defense, and then 27th in coverage. And then looking at points, they were 27th in points scored, 21st in points allowed, and 28th in point differential. So for a team that is 2 years removed from a Super Bowl victory, like we said, pretty underwhelming numbers. But not that they're excuses, but the reasonings, the context behind these numbers is very much the injuries, right? We've talked about Stafford. We've talked about the offensive line being hurt. Cooper Kupp got hurt for a little bit last year.
Aaron Donald missed 6 games. Yeah. By that point, we were already pretty much done, but yeah. Still want to point that out.
Yeah, it's tough. Anytime you have to deal with that many injuries, I don't care how good your team is, you're going to underperform. And something I'm excited to talk about here once we get more into the offseason aspect of things is how they address their depth, because I think they did a fantastic job of doing that this offseason. But before we do that, a couple other notable things that happened last year. The Baker Mayfield game, as Alex pointed out. That had to be like the highlight of the season, right? I know Alex already said it was for him, but Evan, I'm sure you can agree that was like the highlight for Rams fans last year. So
definitely.
Alex mentioned he wanted to talk about it. So if you want to go ahead and just rave about it, go for it.
Yeah. So, obviously we had a 6-game losing streak up to that point. We went from 3-3 to 3-9 before that game. And, Stafford got hurt. I think it was like Stafford got hurt during the Bucks game that we had talked about. Then he missed the next week against the Cardinals. John Wolford was absolutely terrible. He, overthrows Cooper Kupp. He jumps up, grabs it, fucks up his ankle. He's out. Then we come back. New Orleans, Stafford tries to come back. We look good that first half. He gets hurt again. Everything falls apart. But that's just beforehand. So now we're on a 6-game losing streak going into this Raiders game. We've, at that point in that 6 games, have used a combination of John Wolford and Bryce Perkins at quarterback. 2 guys who, in my mind, should not have even been on the active roster. Those guys are like practice squad guys. Cooper Kupp's out. Allen Robinson, even though he wasn't really a good fit for us, he was still our number 2 wide receiver. He was out. Everything was going wrong. All of a sudden, picked up Baker Mayfield because we just needed to do something different. We couldn't roll out the rest of the season with John Wolford and Bryce Perkins, kind of switching off every other game the rest of the season. We had to do something to make things more interesting. So Baker Mayfield became available. I think part of it was the Rams front office didn't want him going to the 49ers, so we picked him up. But at that point during the Raiders game, you're just like, okay, you got nothing to lose at this point. We're 3-9. Just throw him out there, see what he has. And I was just blown away. Obviously, it was a very shaky game, but he comes in and leads a 98-yard drive, with less than 2 minutes to go, no timeouts. And it was just one of the very, very few bright spots in an otherwise disastrous season. And just the way it ended, we basically destroyed the Raiders' playoff hopes. There was obviously a lot of Raiders fans there because there's still a lot of Raiders fans in LA. So it was just a great, great feeling. And the fact, it was the first time in weeks that I saw like Sean McVay get fired up because he was just dealing with not only a ton of stuff on the field, but off the field, like personal stuff. His grandfather passed away, who he was very close with. His wife is from the Ukraine and she had family in the Ukraine. So they were dealing with that. He was dealing with some mental health stuff. So to see him get all fired up, to see the team happy, to see the fans happy, it was just a great feeling. I mean, we knew that technically we still had like a 1 or 2% chance to make the playoffs. We knew we weren't going to the playoffs, but it was just something to feel good about. And the fact that Baker Mayfield, we sign him on Tuesday. He flies in Tuesday night. He meets with the guys like the day before, maybe knows 1 or 2 plays. He's just kind of winging it. It's just special. I mean, even like this offseason, I'm flipping through channels, and all of a sudden on NFL Network, I see that they're showing like the best games from last season. And oftentimes they're re-showing that. And on social media, they repost that 98-yard drive just because even though it was with 2 very underwhelming teams, it was just such an incredible moment. I don't think anyone saw that coming, especially the Raiders are punting it. They punt it on our own 2-yard line, and they're
the
like
best
doing
punt
the gritty.
ever. Yeah, like literally the best punt ever.
Getting all cocky and
throw
it back in their faces. It was incredible.
I have a completely different perspective of that game that I just want to share real quick. So I'm at home. Thursday Night Football, I think the Raiders are going to kill us. I've been making a killing on betting Raiders games during this run. And I didn't bet this game because I don't want to bet against my team. But like I bet the game against the Patriots with the crazy the lateral that went back for a touchdown. Like I bet that game. Like I'm crushing it with the Raiders. And I'm like, the Raiders line, it's 14.5. Like I might bet that. They're gonna kill us. And then we get Baker. And I'm like, God, what are we doing here? And I have been the biggest Baker hater for the last couple of years.
I forgot to mention that. Me too.
I was just like, he's too cocky for me, whatever. But as soon as he came in, like into that game, I was like, he's what I want. He's what I want. Like I get it now. Like I get the love for Baker Mayfield now. He throws the first pass. First pass is like a 15-yard completion to Tutu Atwell. And I literally, because he didn't start, John Wolford started the game.
He did.
And Baker Mayfield comes in, first pass, 15-yard dart to Tutu Atwell. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is our savior. So for the rest of the game, every time Baker Mayfield comes out, I'm like, Baker Mayfield is our savior. And I'm like talking, like I'm obviously speaking in such hyperbole. I'm just being obnoxious because I am broken as a Rams fan. I haven't had a good time watching my team in months. Like I just need something to get me going. Like I need something exciting. So I'm like, Baker, keep giving. And then we're about to score and Cam Akers fumbles, or else the game would have been much closer. And then obviously we have the opportunity to stop them, and we stop them. And there's like a minute left or whatever it is. And I'm like, we're like
a minute 40, I think.
Yeah,
something like that.
I'm like, we're gonna win this. We're gonna win this. And then the punt happens.
You were a little more confident than I was.
Yeah. But like I was talking out of my ass the whole game. I was like something bad would happen for us defensively, and I was like, if Baker was in there, Baker would have made that tackle. Like I'm just making these ridiculous statements because I don't know what else to do. And then the punt happens, and my buddy turns to me and he goes, "Sorry, buddy." And I was like, okay. And then the interception happens, and obviously there was a foul on it or whatever, but he throws an interception on like the second play, but there was a foul. It was a holding on Van Jefferson, whatever. So we get the first down. And then the moment that we get sacked, but then they hit the ball out of his hands, and then it's the big Ben Skoranek 30-yard pass or whatever it was, where Ben Skoranek just mosses the guy. I was like, everybody in my house was
cup in that moment.
Yes, everybody in my house. We were all going nuts. The Van Jefferson touchdown happens, and I have blacked out. I have no memory of the event. But I am telling you, like, that is a top 5 Rams game. Not only was it the best moment this season, that is a top 5 Rams game for me all time. I like the Bucs game from last year's above it. Probably the NFC Championship is above it. Probably the Super Bowl is above it. I don't know what else. That's probably my favorite regular season Rams game ever. I've never been so ecstatic. I was just so happy.
We had something to feel good about because those previous 6 weeks were just absolutely agonizing. And I would sit there every Sunday and watch every game from beginning to end. I was like, I don't care how bad the team is. I'm going to watch. I'm going to, just analyze and just cheer, just hope for the best. And it just, everything just kept going wrong. And finally something went our way last season. And, at that late in the season. And it was a great feeling. And, it's funny when you said that you were a bit, you didn't like Baker before. Me too. When Baker became available, I had a lot of people hit me up being like, are the Rams going to get him? I'm like, I don't know. The guy kind of sucks. He's too cocky. What is the point?
But now, like, the clips that made me like dislike him from previous, like, they make me love him now because I get it now. Like, just now he was at a golf tournament playing golf. Somebody asked to play rock, paper, scissors with him. Baker loses and he keeps walking, and then he goes, fuck that, and goes back and he goes, best 2 out of 3. And then they say, okay, we'll do best 2 out of 3. But if you lose again, you have to wear the hat that we're wearing because it was their brand. Puts on the hat and takes a picture. And like 3 years ago, I would have been like, what an asshole, man. He's got to go play it again. Like, that's obnoxious.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, oh yeah, competition, baby. Like I'm rooting for him so hard for the rest of his career. I have a Rams Baker Mayfield jersey and I'm proud of it. The Baker Rams is some of the most fun I've ever had watching the Rams.
Right. No,
nothing to lose. Just it was everything. Just we were just so bad, and it was just everything we did was awesome. It was great. And yeah, I'll love him. I'll love him forever.
Baker at least made things a little bit more exciting for the little bit we had left of the season. And when he became available, like on waivers, people were like, "Are the Rams going to get him?" I was like, "I hope not." I even made a video on it. I'm like, "Please don't pick him up. Like, what is the point?" And then all of a sudden he picks him up, and everyone's like clowning me. And then everyone watched that game, and they're like, he looked pretty good there, that Raiders game. And Baker actually said, with having Sean McVay coaching and being on the Rams made me enjoy football again. I guess he was in a very dark place that whole year prior and the beginning part of last season. And he said, I had fun playing football again when I joined the Rams. And that's great to hear as a Rams fan, because despite everything that goes wrong, they still create a competitive, winning, positive environment where it's like you're going to come in, you're going to work hard, but you're going to enjoy doing it as well. And that Broncos game too, I mean, to me, that also showcased what the young guys on defense can do, like Kobe Durant, and some of these other younger guys who normally wouldn't get playing time if everyone was healthy. It made me realize at that moment, all right, there's something here with these young guys. So which we can get into in a little bit, how we move forward. But yeah, those two games, the Raiders and Broncos games, were the highlight of last season for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I can remember watching the Rams and Raiders game live, and that tells you how committed I am to this goddamn sport. That I wasn't a fan of either team, and I still sat through every Thursday night game last year. But that throw, like Alex mentioned, the throw to Ben Skoranek where he mossed people, and Skoranek's quickly become my favorite player on the Rams for
he's like a fullback.
Yeah,
because you're the fullback guy. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Fullback. And he is a fullback. I have knighted Ben Skoranek as one of the fullbacks in my mind. Like I said, I love Skoranek, and then Baker Mayfield, like Alex said, I can see why people don't like him, but I also can't see why people don't like him because he's just such a fun and like charismatic, happy guy, and people hate on people that just love life. And it's apparent that Baker's just very happy and loves life. Especially with how he approaches the game and how excited and whatnot he gets. And I'm with Alex. I'm rooting like hell for that guy throughout the rest of his career when he's in Tampa right now. Like, I feel like the cycle of Baker Mayfield now is what it's starting to become is he goes to a new team. People are like, oh, okay, he's there now. Maybe that'll do something. And then he comes out and does something crazy. Like, I'm expecting him to have at least one game for the Bucs this year where he goes absolutely crazy and that Baker Mayfield signature swagger comes out and just uplifts that team. Yeah. And then he's going to go to a new team and the cycle will begin. He's kind of like Fitzmagic, but with more swag. Yeah. That's what I think that career arc is going to be.
It's but with a little more hype coming in, but similar. Yeah.
Well, for sure.
After that Raiders game, and then the following week we had the game, that like freezing game in Green Bay where he struggled. They're like, oh, it's the Baker cycle. He comes in, he balls out. Everyone thinks, okay, maybe he's back. Then he has a bad game. Then he starts to get better. They're like, all right, time to believe again. It's that whole cycle, where it's like, all right, is he back? Does he suck again? What is it? But I definitely have a lot more respect for him now after what he did with the Rams and just the nice things he had to say. I mean, I wanted to bring him back as a backup to Stafford, but I knew that we weren't going to, I think it's like $6 million or whatever to be a backup when we were already very tight on cap space. But if he was willing to take a pay cut to be a backup, I would have been all for it. I'm just pointing that out there. But yeah, I definitely have a newfound respect for him for sure.
Yeah, yeah, he's the man
for sure. But yeah, obviously the Ben Skoranek fullback thing I wanted to bring up doesn't really have a lot to it. It's just Sean McVay said, hey, you know what? I'm the one guy that runs this outside zone heavy rushing scheme, and I don't have a fullback. So let's just take a wide receiver that blocks his ass off and throw him back there and do different things with him. And he kills it. He is awesome at it. Like, It's almost taboo in a way to say that one of the 15 best fullbacks in football is a wide receiver, but he is. Like he's so awesome, and I think that honestly could be the direction that fullbacks start to head. And Brett Coleman made a wonderful video where he kind of said the same thing, where fullbacks are going to start to become like a secondary position rather than your primary position, where you're a tight end, you're a receiver, you're whatever, and then you check in at fullback at times, and that hurts my soul, but I can stomach it a little bit, whatever it takes.
Speaking of Ben Skoranek, he really improved a lot in year 2 because his rookie year was our Super Bowl year, and he struggled. You know, like we had to put him out there from time to time, and there were big moments where Stafford would throw to him, the ball would bounce off of him, and the opposing defense would intercept it. And then that happened in the Super Bowl too. And then also a big game against the 49ers. And all of that offseason after we won the Super Bowl, I'm like, this guy stinks. Like, what is he even doing on our team? Then he comes in and, he plays more of that fullback, I'm going to block for you type of role. And I'm like, all right, this guy, he may not ever materialize into like a great wide receiver, but he could be a very solid player for us, in his role. So he definitely is another guy who earned my respect as well, because there were like 3 or 4 different times during that Super Bowl run where he almost cost us the game. If he catches that wide open touchdown pass right before halftime in the NFC Championship game, then we have that lead going in. I mean, now it doesn't matter because we end up winning, but, not that it may not have been as close as it was. So we may not had to have sweated out quite as much, but, it all worked out. I'm just saying, we struggled a lot. So.
He definitely improved a lot in year 2, and it's great to see that he's starting to settle into a role, and Sean McVay's really found a way to use him. Yeah. But speaking of the offense, something I've been doing a lot in this series is going through and talking about the types of plays that each team runs and the where they rank amongst the league. So offensively speaking, starting out with the run game, which is my favorite aspect of offense, as I mentioned, Sean McVay is very into he has a wide zone rushing scheme that he really relies on. So they were 10th in running outside zone last year. They were 16th in inside zone, uses that as more of like a counter punch in his offense. They were 25th in power, 13th in counter, which pairs really well with outside zone because when you stack the box against outside zone, it opens up the counter because you don't have as many defenders on the second level, and your guards can kind of come in and pull and really set you up there. 25th in draw, 20th in pin and pull. So it was, a very standard Sean McVay type of year with the run game. And looking at the pass game, same deal, 5th in play action. Sean McVay's offense is always very play action heavy. And it especially needed to be last year. It took a lot of the stress off of the backup quarterbacks coming in. They were 24th in air yard percentage, meaning that they were towards the top of the league in the top 10 with yards after catch. Because obviously with Stafford going down, it's not like you guys were firing the ball downfield a lot. It was mainly relying on guys to get yards after the catch. Tied for 19th in average time to throw. Again, a testament to that beat-up offensive line. Something I thought was funny was big-time throw percentage. They were 11th in the league. And I really got to question how much of that was just Baker Mayfield when he was just say, fuck it. And it worked. Because, I mean, like we mentioned, Baker's got that magic. And it shows with the numbers, right? And then they were 27th in average depth of target. When you're a play-action-heavy team, that makes a lot of sense. So nothing too crazy with the numbers there on offense. And then looking at things on defense, coverage-wise, they were primarily a cover 3 team because they were getting ran on a lot. Like teams really, really wanted to pound the rock against the Rams. So they were using cover 3 as kind of like their basis to go up against the run. That was how they defended the run. And it worked well. Like I said earlier, they were one of the top 10 run defenses in football. The other thing with their defense is there really wasn't a lot of diversity or variety in their play calling. Like I said, cover 3 was 30% of their plays. And then from there, it's not no other group or no other type of coverage, has that high of a percentage. It was a lot of, sticking to what they knew because they didn't feel like they necessarily had the guys to execute more complex or different types of schemes because obviously that defense also was very banged up and guys just weren't playing up to what they were supposed to. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. I like to throw that in there to give people an idea of what the team's going to do. I don't expect any of those numbers to change that much because this team is still pretty even with where they were last year in terms of like the types of personnel they have and what types of schemes they're going to be able to run with them. But moving on to some of the exciting stuff. Well, maybe not exciting right away, but the offseason, starting out with free agency and the players they lost, which there were a lot. I got to ask, talking specifically about free agents, not about the big trade that happened, because I want to touch on that separately. What free agent loss hurt you the most? Whether it was something that you think is going to negatively impact the team in a big way, or just someone that like was one of your favorite players that maybe wasn't the best in the world, and you're just sad that he's not on the roster anymore. What free agent loss hurt you guys the most?
Well, we had a big roster turnover, but the first name that comes to mind is probably Nick Scott. I thought he stepped up at moments. He played hard. He wasn't like a big-time draft pick or anything. I also really like Greg Gaines. At the same time, though, while a lot of these guys, it sucks to have them go, I do think they are replaceable. Like, I don't think they're like these superstars. Like losing Ramsey hurts. Losing Bobby Wagner even hurts. But some of these other guys I liked, I think we'll be okay without him. But Nick Scott is definitely, first name that comes to mind.
I understand your Nick Scott thing, and I loved him. But the reason it didn't bother me in the slightest is because the people that bothered me was Mo Alexander and TJ McDonald and John Johnson III. But for this whole McVay era, we have had safety after safety after safety after safety that has overperformed that I've just adored, fallen in love with. When John Johnson III when he was our captain, when he was our captain of our defense in 2020, and we had the best defense in the NFL, he was probably my favorite or second favorite player on the Rams that year. I used to love that guy, but constantly we would let these guys walk for big free agency contracts from teams like the Lions or the Browns, and constantly we'd have their replacement. Now, I'm the opposite to your question, David, is who am I thrilled to have gotten rid of, which is Taylor Rapp.
Yeah, me too.
Understandably so.
Get him the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Right?
He had his moments, but it's not enough. Not enough to.
No, I mean, golly, he did something, I can't remember what it was, but I literally tweeted something like, I can't imagine how it would feel to be Taylor Rapp, because everybody in the fan base cannot wait for him to be off my team. Or I said something like, I can't wait for this guy to be off my team. And it was like one of my best performing tweets was that. Like, so I can't imagine.
You on that.
Yeah, no. So I'm thrilled he's gone. I don't know. I was upset that we lost Baker. I wanted him to be our backup, but at the same time, like I didn't want him to be our starter, and I don't want to overpay for a backup.
$6 million to be a backup either.
Yeah, so this year has been like a constant like this offseason has been constantly like, oh, this guy's gone. All right, for sure. I don't really have any major losses, even with, and I'm sure the big trade you're talking about is Ramsey. Mm-hmm. When Ramsey left, I knew that was coming. We knew that was coming. I
didn't believe it at first, but then about a week or two before, I started to accept. I just thought we would get more in return. I thought we would get a first-round pick for him. I was shocked that we got a bag of chips for him, and that's pretty much it.
Who cares? We're getting rid of the money. That's what it's about.
Right. Well, that's what it came down to. They took on the whole contract. So
yeah, all right, we still got a third, and we got a tight end who's probably never going to play for us, but whatever. I was so sure he was gone. I was so sure that Jalen was gone that I moved to LA in January, and I have 2 Jalen Ramsey jerseys. I've got a white one and a blue one.
Jalen Ramsey jersey.
I was so sure he was gone even in January before the season is over. I was so sure he was gone that I didn't even bring either Jalen Ramsey jersey to Los Angeles.
Oh, wow.
Okay. He does, you know him. He did this series after every game this year where he would where he would do a little podcast right after the game. And
yeah, an hour or so afterwards. Yeah,
this is so cool. This is such an interesting thing. I hope it does well. And he stopped it after week 5 because he was so frustrated.
I think it was after that. Yeah.
losing every single game. And I was like, he's gone. He's not going to want to. And I'm born and raised in Miami. Him going to the Dolphins doesn't hurt me in the slightest. I'm not a Dolphins fan. Like, they're my second favorite team just because. But I don't have beef with him going to Miami,
not at all.
And everything. Get him out of the NFC, it doesn't matter. And I do think he's aging. I mean, the worst game of his career up until that point was the Super Bowl. And then the worst game of his career up until that point was the Bills game, which was week 1. Now, he had a couple good games this season, namely the Seahawks game to end the season that we obviously should have won if it wasn't for that terrible refereeing. Yeah. But where they very clearly did not want the Lions in the playoffs. But it doesn't break my heart as much as you would think, because 2 of his worst games of his career were very recent. Like, I think and corner is a position where speed and physicality and strength, those are like some of the most important aspects. And it's one of the toughest positions to play in the NFL. And sure, he's smarter now than he's ever been, but like, he's just going to keep slowing down. So I don't know. It doesn't kill me.
Yeah, to piggyback off of that. So right when the season ended, there were some cryptic tweets like, where he was like thanking the Rams and then like, I think it was following and unfollowing. There just wasn't anything, there was some uncertainty. And I was like, I think he's just trying to get a new contract or whatever. And maybe I was in a little bit of denial on it. It wasn't until about weeks before the trade that I started to accept that it was happening. But like I said, where I was shocked was what we got in return. All we got was a 3rd-round pick and a tight end who has, I think, 1 career catch, who no one's ever heard of. And I thought Jalen Ramsey, despite him getting older, he is still, in my mind, a top 3 corner in the league. But he is on the backside of his prime to where he will start to decline soon. But I just thought, I was convinced that we would get a 1st-round pick for him, even if it was a late 1st-rounder. I was convinced.
But that's the Rams, isn't it? Like, don't we always overpay for everything and then get underpaid for everything? That's the Rams always. That's how it's been the entire time we've been fans. Les Snead always overpays, and we always get too little. But it's fine. I've gotten over it. I've learned that this is something that's going to happen with the Rams. And I'm really glad that your Bears, David, got really overpaid for that 1st overall pick. That was awesome to see. I was glad to see that somebody other than the Rams was going to overpay for something. Of course, it was the Panthers, but still, I was very happy to see that happen for your Bears, because holy crap, 2 firsts and DJ Moore is crazy.
I think the Bears going to be much more improved this year, but I don't think they're a playoff team yet. I still think they're like a year away.
I think they're fringe, but yeah.
You never know. The NFC is so weak.
Right,
which is where I still think the Rams can compete because the NFC is so bad, but we'll see what happens.
Well, I know. Wait. I know this is a Rams podcast, and I know we're not going to spend too much talking about the Bears, whatever. But I will say about halfway through the season, I think when you guys almost beat but still lost to the Lions, that game, like I think that was the moment where I was like, holy moly, I don't know what I would give to be a Bears fan right now. They have the brightest future in the world, because you guys were in every single game. There was not a game you weren't in. You got blown out like twice, but you kept losing. You're like a shoo-in for the 1st overall pick, and you've got your quarterback. I know that a lot of people are iffy on Justin Fields, but I like Justin Fields. And I was like, okay, you've got your quarterback figured out, and you play hard. You've clearly got the coach. Like, just get that 1st overall pick and get a haul for Bryce Young. And that's exactly what they did. Like, I was thinking to myself throughout the season, I was like, God, I'd love to be a Bears fan.
I tried to tell you about Eberflus.
Yeah, no, you were right.
I remember a year ago.
You sold me on this show 1 year ago. You sold me on Eberflus, and you were absolutely right.
Yeah, I don't know much about him to judge, to be honest with you.
I mean, it's like Alex said, he just brings the best out of his guys. That's the big thing for me. Like Chicago, and again, I don't want to spend the whole episode talking about the Bears, but the culture in Chicago was just so fucked up from Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace. Like, it was very clear that last year that they were there, everybody hated being on that team, and everybody hated everything going on up top. And then Eberflus and Poles came in, and right away, it was a complete culture shock for everybody. They got rid of all the old guys. All the young guys started to buy into the program. And it was, like Alex said, it was an immediate switch. Now, it didn't result in wins, thankfully, right? Thankfully. But it did result in a team that has a lot of potential and is very well coached, and I love it. Like, I keep seeing graphics of people ranking the top coaches in the league, and Eberflus consistently gets put in, like, the top or the bottom 3, bottom 5, and I don't get it. Like, yeah, he lost a bunch of games, but that was kind of the point. No. You trade Roquan Smith early in the season. You trade away your only viable edge rusher early in the season. Like, they were tanking. Tanking's illegal, but they were tanking, you know.
But they were playing hard. Like, this is people that were ranking Brian Flores in the bottom 3 after that terrible Dolphins year. But every year they got better and better. I was furious when they fired him. Now, Mike McDaniels is the man, so, like, now I'm over it. But, like, I was furious when they fired Brian Flores. I was like, God, Stephen Ross, you are the worst owner in the NFL. Because he was so clearly building something really interesting and special. But now that they've got McDaniel, I get it. And I don't think Flores is like the best coach in the world or anything, but it would be the exact same thing as if the Bears continue to get better. They're better this year, and then they're better next year, and then they just fire Eberflus inexplicably.
Yeah,
like Eberflus is clearly a top 20 coach. There are some bums in this NFL. You're gonna tell me that Eberflus is a bum when you've got Mike McCarthy.
How about Brandon Staley? Brandon Staley.
Thank you. Both of them.
Dude,
so bad.
Okay, we have a nerd podcast, and I said for a fraction of a thing, I said fire Brandon Staley, and our comments went nuts. They were like, "That guy knows ball." Everybody knows that Brandon Staley is a certified bum.
Mm-hmm.
He's one of those guys that is a solid coordinator, but just head coach.
Yeah,
but could make a good coordinator.
But he's a defensive coach, so their defense has gotten worse.
Right,
it's gotten worse.
That's
true. I expect your offense to be rudimentary and boring when you're a defensive coordinator at head coach, but their defense is bad too.
Defense is god awful.
Their defense is awful.
Yeah, I promise we're gonna get back to the Rams in a second, but like with the Chargers, Justin Herbert's such a talented football player. He is one of the best quarterbacks in football. It's hard for me to say underrated. Yeah, I do too. I have him at 3 or 4, somewhere in that range. He's amazing. But it's always, he doesn't win games. He doesn't have success. He doesn't have this. He doesn't have that. He hasn't had a run game his whole career, and he hadn't had a defense his whole career. He is single-handedly dragging the Chargers to the playoffs every year, and then when they get embarrassed, all of a sudden it's all on him, and I don't get it. It blows my mind.
I actually think it's the opposite of that. And there's this guy on TikTok, Matthew Sponhour, and they have a podcast called the Stay Hot Pod. It's actually a great watch. I definitely like those guys. But he had this hilarious rant, just hysterical, where he was like, "It's never Justin Herbert's fault, right? That's how like NFL people are, like us. Now we obviously feel that way because we're correct, because that is the truth. But it is the truth that every time they win, it's from this Herculean effort from Justin Herbert.
Yeah.
And every time they lose, it is because everybody sucks. Like it's never Justin Herbert's fault when they lose, and it's always because of Justin Herbert when they win. But that just happens to be the truth.
Yeah, like when they lost that playoff game to the Jaguars, it's because they couldn't get a stop on defense, and because they couldn't establish. It was the second half of the game. You're up by 20-some points, and you can't establish the run to run the clock because Austin Eckler sucks.
I was shocked that Brandon Staley kept his job after that game.
Yeah,
I was like, this guy.
Shocked. I was shocked that he kept his job after the timeout to lose the game that would have sent them to the playoffs if they tied against the Raiders the year before. Like, I couldn't believe they kept him after that, let alone this.
I completely forgot about that.
I bet the Jags to win that game. I bet the Jags to win that game, and they are down 28-0 after 4 Trevor Lawrence interceptions. And I'm sitting next to my friend, and I bet a lot of money on that game. And I'm sitting next to my friend, and he's like, "You nervous?" And I'm like, "Not in the slightest." And
I turned it when it was 27-0. I was like, "Oh, this is done." And all of a sudden, I checked the score. I'm like, "Wait, what?" So I'm not gonna lie and say I watched the whole thing. I watched it. They were blowing them out. I thought it was over. I checked the score a little bit later. Then I was like, couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe what happened. So yeah.
But back to free agency. Talking about some of the guys that y'all lost. You've got Leonard Floyd's no longer a Ram. He got cut, which, we've got that connection with him, former Bear. kind of underperformed there, went to LA, played way better, had a solid career. Troy Hill's gone, Nick Scott, Taylor Rapper, both gone, who you guys mentioned. Greg Gaines is gone, who Evan brought up, and I'm a big fan of. He's just somebody that's incredibly consistent, always going to eat up a bunch of snaps. A'Shawn Robinson, kind of in the same vein. I thought he was better last year than he had been. Bobby Wagner, who I found out played 99.2% of snaps for the Rams defense last year, which is wild given his age.
He had a great year, but I don't blame him for leaving.
No, absolutely.
I don't
You got to get young. That's the big thing here. This team is trying to get young, and guys like that, not only can you not afford them, but they're not helping with that, right? And then Allen Robinson, who I have great disdain for. I don't know if the feeling's mutual because he did absolutely nothing for y'all.
Just wasn't a good fit.
Like, I do know that a lot of Rams fans saw him as like, we got him and then got rid of Robert Woods because we wanted him. So I know a lot of people blame him for the reason we didn't have Robert Woods. So I know a lot of people hate him more. But how I feel about Allen Robinson is very similarly to how I feel about like country music. It's not that I don't have any interest. It's just like, sure, that's a thing, but okay.
Fair enough.
Like, you know what I'm saying? I don't hate him.
Yeah, no,
I
get it.
also don't like him. You know, he didn't do anything for me. He just didn't do anything. You know, I don't blame him for Robert Woods, but yeah.
See, I hate him because his last year in Chicago, he just didn't give a fuck.
Yeah,
he did not want to be there. And that was, like, it was bad. So,
you mentioned that on last year's show.
Yeah. And
I will say,
I was right. Again, I hate taking victory laps, but like on Allen Robinson, I will do it zero shame. Allen Robinson is not good anymore.
Yes.
I think what gone wrong, and I'm not saying this is the only reason. Clearly, he's not what he once was. But I will say that he didn't really have a lot of time before the season to build chemistry with Stafford because Stafford was dealing with his own injury issues. He sat out most of training camp. So they couldn't really develop chemistry. Now, it may not have worked out anyway. I do think we overpaid for him. As Alex says, we tend to overpay for guys sometimes. And then the moment it doesn't work out, we move off quickly.
For a 7th round pick swap, I think was the trade?
Yes.
It was just to get rid of his contract.
Yeah.
He couldn't develop chemistry. He couldn't get any separation. It just, right from the start, it just was very stale and not a good fit.
Yeah.
And I was bummed. I'm not going to blame him for Robert Woods leaving, but I do wonder if we didn't sign Allen Robinson, would Robert Woods still be around? Because I was devastated with Robert Woods because the time that he was on the Rams, he was my favorite player. I love the way he plays. He's an LA guy. He could do everything. I love the guy, and I still root for him, but he's obviously not the same anymore.
Where's he at right now?
He's with the Texans now.
Yeah,
He got cut by Tennessee.
Right.
He didn't do anything there. So either way, it just wasn't a good fit, and it was time to move on. And going back to the Bobby Wagner thing, it was time to get younger. Jalen Ramsey's still he's 28, but he's starting to get older. Bobby Wagner, is getting older. Obviously, we still have the big three, the three pillars. They're up there in age, but they're our three best players. You got to keep them around still. I'd be devastated to see any of those guys go. But it's just one of those things that it was time to pivot. We had kicked the can down the road for so long when it came to pushing the limits on the salary cap. And for years, people were like, how are they doing this? How are they able to get all these guys? How do they have the cap space? It's not real. It finally caught up to us. The bill was due. We maybe could have kicked the can down the road another year. I think we're just getting ahead of it a year early. So we're sacrificing this year because by getting rid of Jalen Ramsey, Leonard Floyd, and Bobby Wagner, we were able to open up over $60 million in cap space for 2024. And so what I think the plan is for this year is to just maybe float around 500, get these young rookies, get them some work, build chemistry. In a weak NFC, maybe you can win some games and get a wild card spot, maybe.
Call me delusional. Call me a delusional fan. I say this all the time. I think we'll go 11-6. Like, call me a delusional fan. Call me a delusional fan. I think
I say 9-8.
I like call me delusional as much as you want, everything like that. I'm sure people will on my lives every time I say this, but I think we're going to go 11-6, and I think we're going to go to the playoffs, whether it's a wild card or win the division. Who is the 49ers quarterback? I know that they can win games without one, but who is their quarterback? The NFC is terrible. We have been there, and if our offensive line is not complete dog shit, I believe we have the best receiver.
Average, yeah.
I believe we have the best receiver in football, and I believe we have a top 10, clearly, maybe top 8 quarterback. I think that we have a top 3 coach, who, by the way, offensive coach, and we have still somebody who I think is the best defensive player.
He's not even 40 years old yet.
Football. I really, call me a delusional fan, but all of this stuff that won us the Super Bowl a couple years ago, sure, we do not have the Von Millers and the guys around it or anything like that, but nobody has everything in the NFC. And what we do have, the most important things in football, the most important things in NFL is owner, general manager, coach, quarterback. Those are the 4 things you absolutely need. And I don't think anybody in the NFC has 4 A+ in any of those. And I think we have 3 A+. And then call Stafford what you want. I think he's clearly top 10. And we have the best defensive player in football.
Top 10, yeah.
I think he's clearly top 10. Now, it's ridiculous that Madden doesn't think he's top 20.
No,
but
what I hate is when people try to say that Kirk Cousins and Dak Prescott are better than Stafford. I'm like, where? Where do you see that? They are not
Prescott is a bum. Dak Prescott as a quarterback is the same as Brandon Staley as a coach.
Cousins cannot win the big games. He can't win the big games.
Kirk Cousins is at least competent. Dak Prescott is
he's
not, and I will die on this hill. Dak Prescott is a bum.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we're going to go like 9-8, and the reason why I say that is because the first 4 of the first 5 games are very difficult. But then after that, it gets much easier. So in the first 5 games, we face the Seahawks on the road, the 49ers, which, we don't know who's starting at QB. I hope it's Sam Darnold, because I think he's a bum. But, Seattle, 49ers at home. Then we got to go on the road to face the Bengals. Then we play the Colts. I think that's a win. Then we play the Eagles. After that, it gets a lot easier. We play the Cardinals twice. We play Seattle again. We play the Browns, the Steelers, the Saints. The Giants, who I think are going to regress a lot this year.
No, you're wrong about that. The Giants will be better, but Daniel Jones will hold them back. The Giants are in the exact same position.
I'm not sold on Daniel Jones.
No, neither am I. The Giants are in the exact same position that the Rams were in 2020 after 2019. That's exactly what they are. They will be better this year because it's a year under Dayball's system, and they are going to be a year better. They're going to be better this year. Their results might not be as good. They might not win a playoff game, but they will make the playoffs. I think the Giants could totally beat us. I'm completely disagreeing with you on the Seahawks. I'm completely disagreeing with you. In our worst season since since year 1 of Los Angeles, like 6 years ago in 2016, in our worst season since then, we came within a play of beating the Seahawks in LA.
Under 3 minutes.
In LA and in Seattle. Mind you, when we were having our worst season, and both of those were post-Stafford injury, post-Aaron Donald injury, post-Cooper Kupp injury, both of those. So that was Baker Mayfield for the second one, John Wolford for the first one, like disastrous level teams. And we came within a play of beating them in both games in LA and in Seattle, and it was their best year in 3 years. And this Geno Smith is a master in this and that. Geno is going to be exposed this year. He is also a bum. We are going to crush them in both games. I completely disagree.
I agree with you that I think Seattle is being heavily overrated in the sense that, I think Geno will regress a little bit too. I think we were under 3 minutes to go. We were winning in both those games. And I tell everyone that 90% of our roster was hurt. That, a majority of our roster at that point was either third string guys or plumbers and construction workers that we signed off the street because we needed some bodies in there. That was our squad, and we still almost beat them twice. And I know that we always play Seattle very, very tough given the circumstances. The reason why I say we're going to split with them is because we're playing them week 1, and I think it might take a little time for some of these rookies to get going.
Yeah,
but
maybe.
We'll see.
I just disagree. Yeah. I disagree.
But I do think that Seattle is going to regress, and I also think the Giants are going to regress because we also don't know about the Saquon Barkley situation either.
Yeah, that's the big thing.
I mean, he'll probably wind up playing, but when though? So
yeah, it's tough.
All right, what else you got, David?
Sorry.
I just want to say, no, you're good. You're good. For the sake of not going on a 40-minute tangent, I just want to say I respectfully disagree with both of you when it comes to Geno and Dak. I have a little more faith in them than you two seem. So
yeah, I know I'm the world's biggest Dak hater, but I'm going to remain the world's biggest Dak hater.
Listen,
I've always thought he was bad.
Listen, you have good reasoning for the things you say, so I'll take your word for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you're like delusional for saying that. I'm sure you've got good reasoning for it.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, just wrapping up talking about free agency, and then we can dive into the draft because, oh my God, it was massive. Some other names you guys lost: Bryce Perkins, Malcolm Brown, Matt Skura, Riley Dixon, Baker Mayfield, John Wolford, Matt Gay, Jacob Harris, David Long, Brandon Powell. All of these names are
Matt Gay hurts. That one hurts.
Yeah.
But
hurts.
we haven't.
He's
Everybody
great.
that you've mentioned that we've lost, we've talked about. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, yeah, Matt Gay. He won the. You know, we won the Super Bowl with him. He was our kicker to win the Super Bowl. He was great that year. But he's the highest paid kicker in the NFL now. We are not going to have the Rams. Are not going to have the highest paid kicker in the NFL. Yeah. We are not going to do that.
We weren't going to pay that, and he deserves that money.
Of course.
I'm just saying I really liked him because he was like, no matter what, he came up, you knew it was money in the bank.
Yeah, he's automatic.
And now we're going to go with some undrafted guy that we don't know. Now, Matt Gay came out of nowhere. He was cut by Tampa. He came in midway through the 2020 season and absolutely crushed it, but no one really knew anything about him beforehand. So who knows? Maybe we'll find magic in one of these undrafted guys.
Yeah.
But, I just really liked Matt Gay a lot.
Of course. And then everybody else you just named, we obviously talked about Baker, but we're not going to be needing to talk about Brandon Powell. Like, yeah, he was a good return man, but he also fumbled every once in a while. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like the reason we aren't talking too much about free agents is because, yeah, we get it. We lost everybody. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now, the draft was a lot. It was a lot. I'm going to be honest. This is the first draft in a long time that I do not know everybody's names.
I've studied them a lot. I mean, not beforehand, but I read up on a lot of these guys afterwards. And I remember, David, you and I spoke about Kobe Turner.
Oh, yeah.
And that guy, I didn't know anything about him. And then when we drafted him, I read up on him. And he, some of these guys have a huge chip on their shoulder. And I think that could benefit them. There are some of these guys who, stayed in college a little bit longer, used their COVID year of eligibility. And some people were like, oh, well, they must not be that good. They're there longer. I think that could benefit them. Maybe they weren't ready before. We got this guy, Byron Young, who was a manager at like a Dollar Tree or Dollar General store.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. He's got a Kurt Warner-like story to him. So long story short, he was like a manager it was either Dollar Tree or Dollar General. Then he goes to like Georgia Military Institute for 1 year. Then he goes to Tennessee and crushes it, and now he's with the Rams. So he's got that chip on his shoulder where he's like, all right, I'm going to go out and ball. He's a good player. I've watched his tape. Kobe Turner as well. I'm very excited about the offensive lineman we got, Steve Avila. That guy has not allowed a sack, I think it was, in the last 2 seasons.
We got the best guard in the draft. Yes, we got the best guard in the draft.
And listen, I know it's college. People are, but that's college, though. This is the NFL. It's different. I get that. I also know I don't care who you play. You don't give up a sack for 2 years. That's incredible. And yes, TCU got crushed in the national championship, but they still made it there. So,
and he didn't give up a sack in the Natty against that unreal Georgia team. Like, let's
that won by like 60 points. So
yeah, but again, it's everybody's like, oh, it's all about the competition. They played the competition.
So I'm very excited about him. There's this guy, Puka Nacua, who I think is going to – it's going to take him a little time, but I think they drafted him to kind of try to be that Robert Woods type of receiver, do a lot of jet sweeps, get a lot of yards after catch. that kind of guy. We may not see a lot of him this year, but one of those guys that
I agree. I think he's going to be on the field pretty early. I love Puka. I'm really high on what he brings to the table.
Is the wide receiver 3 role is up for grabs. That's one of the position battles because it's him,
for sure.
It's Tutu Atwell, it's Ben Skoranek, it's Demarcus Robinson, Tyler Johnson. So it's up for grabs. He's going to get his opportunities. It's just, we'll see if he's ready, and we'll find out.
You're saying that Coop and Van are number 1 and 2?
I think so, yeah. Just because of experience-wise.
Sure.
We'll see about Van. Sure. Van, this is a make-or-break year for Van Jefferson. So
yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Yep.
I just think it's experience-wise, they're going to give him the first go-ahead at the wide receiver 2 role. I think, but we'll see. There's a lot of uncertainty.
Right. See, me personally, I would almost not assume, but hope that Skoranek would end up being the wide receiver 2 early on, just because, like you guys said, he took a step up last year, and he's clearly carved out an important role in this offense. Like, McVay is going to, in my opinion, prioritize wanting him on the field because of what he brings as a blocker. Now, Van Jefferson's fine, right? And maybe he's a little bit better as a pass catcher than Skoranek right now, but I think what Skoranek brings as a blocker and as a versatile piece is a little more important. So I would think Puka would be more competing with a guy like Van Jefferson, and I don't have a doubt in my mind that he could beat somebody like that out. Because like you mentioned, he's one of those guys that had to stay in college for an extra year and kind of marinate there. He's super smart, great before and after the catch, smooth route runner, really good at point of contact. Like, he's awesome. The only reason he fell as far as he did is because he got hurt last year. And he didn't get to work out at all, which sucks. And maybe that's something you're concerned about is the durability. But I think Puka's awesome. And
we're also not talking at all. We're also not talking at all about Tutu Atwell, who Sean McVay literally said one of his biggest regrets of last year was not unleashing Tutu earlier, and Tutu played very well at the end. So, like, the wide receiver position for the Rams right now, it's like 20 guys. You know what I'm saying? And I think they're all going to play an equal amount.
There's a lot. The opportunity.
Yeah.
The opportunity is there. It's just about who is going to step up the most. But there's a lot of guys who are capable. Yeah, Tutu Atwell's interesting. He came in with a lot of controversy only because, and I'm in this boat too, I think we should have drafted Creed Humphrey instead.
Yeah.
He's great. We needed him. We took Tutu Atwell instead when we didn't need him because we already had Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, and Van Jefferson at the time. But, I will say Tutu has breakout material because he's got speed. Stafford, if he's given a second, can chuck it down the field to him and all of a sudden get like a 60-yard gain just like that. So the potential's there. It's just who is going to step up the most. And that's what I'm looking forward to. This is the most intriguing training camp and preseason for the Rams since 2017 probably. Because from 2018 to last year, and I made a video about this, about how everyone's role was kind of established already. We knew who the starters were. We knew who the backups were and what their role was. Really, training camp was just building chemistry and like trying to find the last like 4 or 5 roster spots. Now there are starting jobs up for grabs. So there are guys who are going to bust their asses and compete with each other. And this goes back into preseason. With preseason, with the exception of Sean McVay's first year as head coach in 2017, 2018 to 2022, he rested all starters and really all backups who had an established role because we didn't want to risk injury. Now some of these guys are going to play because, one, they need to get that experience, but two, we're not going to know right away who is starting. So we're going to be seeing a lot of these guys in these preseason games too, which I'm looking forward to.
I'm so excited for the preseason. And as we already said, I did move to LA. So I'm definitely going to go to the preseason game that's out here. I think we're playing the Chargers for one of them. So I think we've got 2 preseason games that are out here in SoFi. So I can't wait to go to them. I think this is going to be the most fun preseason for me personally out of the last couple of years. And the last 2 years have been really fun preseasons with the Bryce Perkins year 2 years ago. And then last year, Lance McCutcheon. So we always have kind of like a fun breakout guy for preseason. And I'm really, really excited for this preseason.
But yeah, the Rams rookie class is really exciting.
Yes.
Kobe Turner, like Evan brought up earlier, was one of my favorite players in the class, not just because he's a freakishly athletic defensive lineman. Like, I'm sure we're all aware Aaron Donald like set a combine record for 3-cone, and Kobe Turner is heavier than Aaron Donald and ran it faster than him, which is crazy. But I love him off the field because him and I are cut from the same cloth. He's a music kid. He's they call him the conductor.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're good. He committed to college initially to pursue music, and he like writes choral pieces and orchestral pieces in his spare time, and he actually like full on conducts. Like, he's awesome. A couple other guys I was a big fan of. Davis Allen from Clemson, who's going to be, more of a tight end 2 type of guy. But he had a 91% contested catch rate his final year in college, which is absurd. And is just going to be like a really good red zone threat for somebody to say, you know what, fuck it, he's tall, just throw it at him and he'll catch it. And then one of my hotter takes for the Rams, and you guys can call me crazy for this, in a world where Matt Stafford just can't play, right? I know Evan already mentioned that he's healthy. But if something happens where Stafford were to get hurt again, knock on wood, God forbid, or something where he's not able to play, Stetson Bennett could be this year's Brock Purdy, where he is fantastic, but he overachieves out the ass because everything is perfect for him in terms of like coaching and having some decent weapons around him. Now, I don't think he's going to take the Rams all the way to the conference championship, but I do think he can make them a viable football team if it comes to that.
I was such a Stetson Bennett hater. Like I was the guy that was like tweeting out, like retweeting those tweets that was like, these are all the quarterbacks in the NFL younger than Stetson Bennett. And it's like half of the AFC is just young.
Oh, there he went. We'll go ahead and wrap up here. Not fully wrap up, but get the last couple things out of the way. Shout out to Alex for being on. Like I said, Escape Pod Podcast. Make sure to check that out. There will be a link in the description down below. Guy's a legend. But yeah, like me and Alex were starting to get into, I am a Stetson Bennett fan. I won't lie. I don't think he's fantastic, but I think this is the perfect type of system for him to play, and he's very much a McVay quarterback. And if it comes down to it, I do think he can win more games than people would expect. And he's a career overachiever. So it's not like I'm pulling this out of my ass. This is something we've seen from him in college. It wouldn't shock me if that happened in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't shock me either. I mean, I don't want to bank on him as being our next franchise QB whenever Stafford decides to retire.
Right.
But I don't think he's terrible.
Worst case, he's a good backup, right? Like,
have a lot of playing experience in college, and he's won 2 national championships, so he's got the skill. I just, if we're going to move off of quarterback soon, I would draft another guy.
Well, I don't think anyone's expecting Stetson to be the franchise guy. Just like I don't think anyone's expecting Purdy to be the franchise guy in San Fran.
Right.
It's
if you ask 49er fans,
that's another conversation for another day. If you ask level-headed individuals, I don't think they're going to say Purdy's a franchise quarterback, which no shade to Niners fans. I love the Niners. But yeah, point being, he's a good backup. He'll play in the system well, and he's a career overachiever. So if he ever achieved in the NFL, I wouldn't be shocked.
It's he definitely has, like I said, with some of the other guys, the chip on their shoulder.
Yeah, he's got that dog in
him. Had an interesting journey, has been through a lot, counted out a lot, and proved a lot of doubters wrong. So we'll see.
For sure.
One guy I did forget to mention too is Trey Tomlinson, also a TCU guy.
Yeah, for sure.
He's a little small, but and that's the only reason why I think he dropped as far back as he did, because he's only like 5'9",
5'7", 5'8". He's tiny.
But he's got skills.
For sure.
He's really good. It's just, he's small. So it'll be interesting to see how he's utilized.
But the Rams are no stranger to small corners. We've seen him make it work before. And I think, he's another guy kind of like Stetson. He's just a straight up dog. Yeah. The height is scary for sure. And I will admit he gets burnt a little more than you'd want, but if he's a nickel corner for y'all, I think you're feeling pretty good about it. And then a couple other guys, Zach Evans, I'm a big fan of. Perfect fit for this offense. Really cooked in the zone scheme that he was running in college. Just another good back to have. And at this point in the NFL, you can never have too many good running backs. Some of the defensive linemen, O'Shawn Mathis is pretty solid. Nick Hampton is exciting, super, super explosive, great first step. Who else is there? Byron Young, who you mentioned earlier, one of the more athletic defensive linemen in the class as a whole. And then Desjuan Johnson, who kind of reminds
Mr. Relevant.
Yeah. Reminds me a little bit of Michael Bennett, who I'm sure Rams fans are properly familiar with from his tenure in Seattle. Just the type of guy that is an edge rusher, but if you kick him inside, he's probably going to cook a little bit more because he can just outmaneuver guards. And if you come out in a package where you have him, Kobe Turner, Aaron Donald, and either Byron Young or Nick Hampton on the field, holy shit, that would be an insanely fast front four. Like, there's not a lot of offensive lines that are going to be able to block something like that if everybody's cooking. So I think the Rams killed it with the
draft. I agree. And a lot of people say, like, oh, you guys have the worst defense in the NFL. And that's because they don't know who these guys are. And
right.
Yeah, there's a lot of rookies. They haven't played yet. But one thing I know is Sean McVay and the coaching staff is going to get these guys ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're going to be better than a lot of people expect. You know, just because people can only name like 3 or 4 guys on the team doesn't mean that everyone else sucks, you know? So it's these guys are good. They're fast, they're strong, they're physical, and I'm very excited to see them out on the field for sure.
Yeah. Oh, and also I think we'd be remiss if we skipped over the fact that y'all drafted Ethan Evans out of Wingate.
Oh, yeah.
Punter, who I have a love-hate relationship with already because he's wearing the number 42, which disgusts me. But I mean, he's Wingate's what? Is it D2? I don't know. I suck.
Yeah, D2 or D3. It's
he's got a monster leg. Like, that's what matters, obviously. There's a clip of him somewhere booming a punt. I want to say it was in practice. I want to say it was 70 yards in air, something like that. Crazy shit.
The height of the punts too are great. So
yeah,
you know, we got rid of all of our special guys. It's gonna be all new. It's gonna be exciting. But hey, from the clips I've seen of it, the guy can kick the ball. So or punt it rather. But yeah, it's one of those, you know, it's a lot of uncertainty because we have a lot of new rookies coming in. But from what I've seen of these guys have the skill and have the potential, have high ceilings, and you know, we had to make a big splash in the draft, and I think we did. And I think that we're going to be better. A lot of people are saying that we're going to be like a 4-win team, and I don't think we're going to be that bad.
Yeah, so, I don't see it either. I think and that's a good transition. That was going to be my next question, is like a record prediction. I think it's at minimum 6-7 win team. I think at worst you're going to be mediocre to the point where it's not exciting. You know, you don't think you're fighting for a playoff spot, but also not bad enough to get like a really high pick. I just don't see that for the Rams right now. But I do think at their apex, there's a world where they slip into the playoffs. Because as we've mentioned 100 times over, and will get mentioned in every single NFC team preview I do, the NFC sucks.
Yeah.
And if you have brutal. Yeah, if you have any talent at this point, you have a chance at making it in. Right. The Bears can make it in. The Rams can make it in. There's pretty much an argument for any team not named the Cardinals.
So I think most people will have the Eagles and the 49ers as the 2 best teams in the conference. And then after that, it like drops off a lot. But even then, the Eagles and 49ers have question marks. Obviously, the 49ers is the QB situation. The Eagles lost a lot of guys in the offseason, and they're replacing them with a bunch of rookies. I still think they're going to be really good. But the point is it's very wide open. So when I tell people that the Rams can squeak in the wild card, I get called delusional. But like, there is a world where I can see that happening, is all I'm saying. If we were in the AFC, I would say, no way, not this year. But because it's the NFC, I think it's very possible.
Yeah. So. And like I said, you can legitimately make an argument for any team in the NFC to find their way into the playoffs right now.
Right.
It's brutal.
Except for maybe the Cardinals. But even then, if Kyler Murray comes back.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty reasonable to expect 9 or so wins from the Rams. I don't think that's crazy at all. But final question before we get out of here, because your earbuds are dying and I'm cutting it close to having to make an appointment. who are you most excited to watch next year? Out of everyone on the whole roster, who are you most excited to watch?
Ooh, there's a lot of guys. Like, we talked about how excited I am and how we're all excited about this new draft class. But if we're not talking about the three pillars, my guy is Kobe Durant, the cornerback.
Ooh, okay.
I think he is very, very underrated in the sense that, obviously it's hard to replace a guy like Jalen Ramsey. I don't expect him to be at Jalen Ramsey's level right now, but he had the most return yards after interception in the league last year, meaning the most yards after interception. And he didn't even play a full season. He missed 4 games because of an injury too. And so he's got good hands. He's got a lot of speed. He's got good instincts. I'm very excited about Kobe Durant. Obviously, I think Matthew Stafford's going to come in and just prove all these doubters wrong because, obviously injuries are a concern, but from what I've heard, he's healthy because he's been recovering since November. And what happened last year was we made it all the way to the Super Bowl. It was the first year of 17 games that year. We made it all the way to Super Bowl one, and then there was hardly any time to recover. And then he didn't really play. He didn't really participate much in training camp. And now I think he missed half the season. He spent all this time recovering. From what I've heard, everything's going very well. So I can't wait for him to prove all the doubters wrong. And him and that Cooper Kupp connection are still great. I'm also excited about Cam Akers. I know Cam Akers was very, very up and down, not consistent enough.
For sure.
But I think he came back quickly from his Achilles tear. And credit to him for doing that. But I don't think he was ready because in that playoff run, he was very sluggish and not very good.
Yeah.
The playoff Super Bowl run. And then the first part of 2022, I think he was still recovering from his Achilles a little bit. And then he had some, there were some locker room disputes and all that. That got worked out. But then once he came back, he looked fully healthy and sharp. He was like a top 7 running back the last 5 weeks of the season. That if he can carry that over, I'm very intrigued to see if he can carry that over into this season and be a very viable, legit running back. But this is a make or break year for him, so we'll see.
Yeah, for sure. Me personally, if I had to pick somebody, I also got to go with Kobe. Kobe Turner is just right away one of my favorite players in the NFL. I think the fact that he's getting to work with Aaron Donald, who very similar to him is a really athletic, kind of smaller defensive lineman, is going to do wonders for his career. I know he's a little bit older. I think he's 24 right now. I still think he's got plenty of gas in the tank. I'm not worried about him being a little older compared to most rookies. I think he's going to be awesome. I think him and Aaron Donald are not only going to work well as mentor and protege, but also as teammates alongside each other. And I think it's going to make the Rams' interior defensive line really scary, especially against the pass. But yeah, there's, like you said, there's a lot of exciting things to talk about with the Rams that I feel like just aren't being talked about enough. And I think I picked the two perfect people to come on and showcase that because you two are some of the most passionate, not only Rams fans I know, but football fans I know. So thank you again for coming on. And then thank you, Alex, as well, who's out there somewhere. But yeah, I think that wraps it up for us. We've covered pretty much everything. We've been here a little bit longer than I anticipated, but I can't complain one bit. This was a ton of fun, as it always is. So thank you again for coming on. Like I said, if you want to plug your TikTok, go ahead. By all means, you can see it on the screen there. But
for those who don't know, my name's Evan, but I go by LA Rams Superfan on TikTok. I mostly, predominantly just talk about the Rams, everything that's going on with the team, news and updates. During the season, I'll do game recaps. I'll talk about injuries, showcase anyone who maybe stood out that week or standing out during the season. Just talking about everything Rams, even off the field stuff like the new practice facility and team headquarters they're building. Just everything Rams I cover. But I also like to discuss other topics with fans of all teams, just because football is a great sport and NFL is that one sport that I think there's always something to talk about year round, except for in the month of July, late June. But other than
you can find it if you try hard enough.
right, that's true.
You can dig it up.
But there's always something, and even if you're not a Rams fan, I highly recommend you check out my page, just because I can tell you everything going on with the Rams, and I'm also very engaging on there, interacting with people in the comments and DMs, and talking about all teams in general. So thanks again, David, for having me on here. Second year in a row is a lot of fun.
Absolutely, man, and hopefully we can shoot for a third next summer.
Definitely.
But yeah, definitely make sure to check out his TikTok. That will be linked down below, as well as Alex's podcast. As I mentioned earlier, the Escape Pod podcast. Ton of fun. If you're like me and you're a nerd, I got the Batman poster behind me. It's a great watch. And then also all my links will be in the description is down below as well. TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, my podcast called Run the North. We're an NFC North podcast and we talk about all sports across the board. But yeah, that's going to do it for the Rams preview. So to everyone out there watching, as well as Evan and Alex, wherever he may be in the void, I hope you all have a wonderful day, evening, night, afternoon, whatever time of day it is for you. I hope you enjoy it because you're all wonderful people and you deserve it.